Hello and welcome to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network, presented by Coors Light. Go from full time to game time. Coors Light, made to chill. Make sure you find the Raptors Show wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe. And please rate and review the show. I'm your host, Wayne Blue. I am joined by Blake Murphy for segment one, actually for all four segments, really. So this is what we're going to do today.
Every day, yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, that's right. But I have to say the name every single time. First segment, we got Dennis Schröder calling in roughly around 5 minutes. We'll check in with Dennis, see what's going on with the team, see what's going on with him. We'll talk a little bit more Raptors, Hornets after that. Thrilling win last night, boys. It was a dispiriting watch for the first half, but the Raptors did pull out in the second half behind Scottie and Pascal, who were excellent in the game yesterday. From that point, we will take a break. Then we'll come back with Tom Haberstroh, which I've never talked to Tom, but, been a big fan of his works. I heard a lot of his podcasts and obviously read a lot of his eccentric findings, especially around the officials.
Very smart guy.
Very, very smart guy. We will take a break. Then we will go to Oren Weisfeld, who will join us in studio, talk a little Canada basketball, and just a little Raptors. And, then we'll come back segment 4 around the NBA, bring in producer and co-host Alex Wong. But in the meantime, Blake, how you doing, man? How you feeling after that excellent win against the Hornets last night?
I'm good. I like that you tried to stretch the intro into 5 minutes just to get us right to Dennis. You got to a minute 40 there.
It's not bad.
Look, last night was, I don't know. I have a hard time knowing what to feel about these games where they finally did find it. They played a really good fourth quarter. Scottie took over. There were some rotation and lineup changes that we had been asking to see. They were implemented and they worked pretty effectively. That stuff's all great. It is also hard to get past the fact that this was a Hornets team down like 6 rotation players and you dug a big hole against them and were down double digits and had to fight your way back again. Yes, by the end, it was a 15-point win. It was pretty comfortable in the fourth quarter. So that's good. And those, the positive things did happen. It was Gary Trent's best game of the season. I do just think that, that has to be couched at least a little bit in that once again, they dug themselves a hole against a really bad team.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is something I want to ask Dennis, but before we get to Dennis, I'll just ask you. So this is now the 7th straight game the Raptors have gone down by double digits, and it happened pretty quickly early on in the game. Why do you think it keeps happening?
Yeah, I mean, look,
is there one common theme?
It's 19 times in 26 games now.
My God.
They've built a double-digit deficit at some point, and 14 times or 15 times rather, 14 times. Some number of times it's happened in the first half. I crossing my wires on stats. They fall down by double digits a lot early. Yeah. And I think part of it is that, like, the starting lineup, we now have, lineup data takes forever to stabilize, but we have a pretty good sample that says, at best, this 5-man unit is okay. And probably a little worse than that. They got beat by the Hornets starters yesterday. So I think that is a part of it, but there's also a part of it that is, I don't know if preparation is preparedness is the word or whatever, but there doesn't seem to be. This is a team that can really find that intensity gear when they're trailing as the game goes on. I don't really have an explanation for why it seems that they need to get hit first.
Yeah,
and I don't think it's as simple as the starting 5 doesn't work. I think we need to see different looks from that group, but like that lineup should be able to beat Bryce McGowan's and Nick Richards,
I agree with you. I mean, look, listen, I think the starting lineup could stand to change just because I want to see some more experimentation. That's why I was happy to see Darko. And whatever, we've been going hard at Darko. So we got to acknowledge, obviously, when he does well. I mean, he changed his rotation significantly yesterday, including in the fourth quarter where, pretty notable, but he never brought Jakob Poeltl back into the game.
Yeah, only 15 minutes.
And I suppose it's not that surprising because it did happen the last time they played the Hornets too, I believe. I think he also closed largely with a small ball group or played a lot of the fourth quarter with a small ball group. But yeah, your thoughts about that, because he did ultimately essentially come back with the closing lineup, except it was Gary in place of Jakob. What did you make of that move?
Yeah, I mean, it was good to see it. And we've kind of been, like you said, asking for some version of that, whether it's Gary in Dennis' spot for a few minutes, Gary in Jakob's spot for a few minutes, something to give a little bit of spacing to that Pascal-Scottie Barnes duo, which we, on paper and in the limited sample we have says, yeah, putting shooters around those two is really going to help the offense breathe. Even at times when Gary Trent doesn't have it going necessarily, the hard part here is there's a little bit of a chicken and the egg where Gary played better alongside more starters, as we know he does, and most players would. But you have to play a certain level of good to justify being put in those lineups. So there's like, how do you make sure Gary is bringing that, and that's going to be a look you can go to every night. On top of which, they've been pretty rigid with the starting lineup, and maybe this is something that materializes more just in rotation patterns. But I think, look, even if you're a coach that likes to script out your rotation patterns very, very specifically until like the 44-minute mark of the game, you got to play the matchups and what is working in that game for the last 4 or 5 minutes. And I like credit to Darko for doing that and going to that look twice in the game.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what really did highlight is when you don't have Jakob on the floor, obviously it cuts down your rim protection, doesn't allow you to play as much pick and roll. You're probably playing more mismatch basketball where you're attacking that mismatch through one of your big wings. But at the same time, those big wings now have more space to attack. When they had those switches and isolations for Pascal Siakam down the stretch, and I thought Pascal was awesome down the stretch last night, or when they were able to play small ball with Scottie in, even when Scottie was in with Precious to start the fourth quarter, there was a lot more space for them to get downhill. And, of course, it's on those guys to play big. It's up to those guys to still be able to make up that deficit. But, I mean, I don't think Scottie has any issue playing big. He got 17 rebounds last night and 3 blocks, and I think 2 goaltends as well that were a 50-50 goaltends, I would say. So, I mean, it's the options are there, and I do feel like it was good to see Darko explore those options.
Definitely. And, if we're going to criticize him yesterday for not doing those things, you got to give him credit for doing them this time, even if I think, probably the 26 game mark was a little late to start doing those things. And obviously this is also on the players to find their spot in looks that are not super familiar to them. Now, look, Dennis Schröder has played a lot of NBA basketball in his career. He's played in all sorts of different lineups. I thought it was pretty telling and like pretty important that in those looks, he played really well off the ball. Like, even though he's not a knockdown shooter and that kind of floor spacer, he got off the ball well, relocated, used cutting and just, movement away from the ball to make sure that if those doubles came to Scottie and Pascal, and the Hornets were very aggressive, sending like hard doubles the first time a dribble went toward the middle, making sure he was in the right spots for those passes and connecting kind of the post pass to 2 passes away. That's not, it's something they'll ask of him because that's the role sometimes, and he's moved in and out of his career. But it is a tough thing to go from, like we talked about yesterday, one of the highest touch guys on the team to be focused more on, I'm going to get us into the set, and then I'm going to work off ball to make things easier for the guys over here rather than trying to create for them with the ball in my hands.
I hear that. And I'm sure that that's something that we can ask Dennis about, just in sort of that negotiation of sort of what your role is and sort of like, how you fit into certain groups and everything like that. But at the same time, I think it's something he's capable of, right? If you look at the possessions that they had down the stretch, a lot of it was oriented towards Pascal because he was the guy who, honestly, I literally went through this and I clipped it this afternoon. Pretty much every time Pascal touched the ball down the stretch, something positive came out of it. He had like 5 rebounds on the stretch. He had 2 assists, 1 to Scottie for a dunk, 1 to Gary for a 3. He had 2 and 1s. He took a mid-range jumper as well. He got a couple of stops. It was all good. But the offensive approach was just, okay, the Hornets are switching, so we're going to have Pascal screen for the ball. The Hornets are going to switch one of their guards onto him, whether that's Rozier, whether that's, Ish Smith was playing, which is, wow, what a blast from the past. That guy used to kill us, by the way. He was an all-time Gerald Henderson candidate.
He was like, other than Etuan Moore, nobody has ever killed the Raptors more with like those 12-foot floaters.
Oh, my God. He even hit us one yesterday, and I think it was right after we saw Dwayne Casey in the building, and I was just like, this is too much for me. This is actually like, I'm getting chills in the bad way. But the offense was largely get Pascal on the ball, force a switch, and then at that point, Dennis is just giving the ball up to Pascal on the post and then relocating, as you said. That's nothing that is outside of his repertoire. In fact, it's probably easier than what the role he would typically play. But especially in those moments when those guys have mismatches, when teams are conceding those switches, when that is sort of what the offense is geared towards that night, I don't see a reason why he couldn't do that more often. And of course, it's contingent on the fact that you need spacing around that to make it happen too, because the Hornets probably cover it differently if they if Jakob was on the floor. They probably don't need to concede those switches as much. They could probably go under a couple of screens, trusting that there's a rim protector there. That doesn't happen as much when you actually spread the floor out. So
And
I think Gary's role's really huge in that too.
Yeah, and even if you give up the switch still as part of your pick and roll coverage, you can send help more aggressively or differently and from different spots off of Jakob Poeltl, where, a thing that Pascal and, we didn't see Scottie post up as much, but it's the same kind of idea when you're driving. Charlotte really preferred to send that help from the top. And if you are, and that is because you have spacing there, if you have Jakob Poeltl on the floor and he's in the weak side dunker, say, that help is coming, into the paint and as you go middle. If not, some teams will do it from the baseline, the base go strategy. But I do think that makes where you're helping from a little more complicated for a defense, even if you still switch.
Yeah. And it was interesting too, because you saw the decision making for the Hornets in real time at the start or the middle of the fourth quarter when Pascal checked into the game and they got those mismatches. They were sending the double teams. And so ultimately what he did was he found Scottie, he found Gary. And then when they switched to more single coverage, he hit an and one jumper, and he also made another one where he took a mid-range jumper easy in the paint. So it's like, yeah, you could definitely see why it's difficult for certain teams to cover that. Of course, having said that, it was the Hornets.
Yes.
I'm not saying that this is going to work every single time. It's not like a fail-proof strategy. But I did like seeing it. And I did like the fact that Pascal and Scottie both, were excellent in the game. I think I went through and counted. Like, I literally went through and counted because I did not find a statistical query way of doing this. Maybe I asked Tom Haberstroh after this too in our next segment. But there's already been 9 instances this season where both Pascal and Scottie have scored 20+ in the same game. Compared to last year, it only happened 12 total times.
And last year they had better spacing around them.
Yeah.
Slightly.
Yeah, I would say.
You had Fred VanVleet, who, even though he didn't shoot the three terrific last year, teams still really, really treated as a floor spacer, especially in relocation situations.
Wow.
Look,
did he pay to say that, Blake?
Yeah. You see the game he had last night? Yeah, he doesn't need me to pay to say that. Anyway,
He's got more cash flow now.
Scottie and Pascal being able to do that in the same game should not be surprising. It was something that we were perplexed about the first 7-8 games of the year, where it looked like, at least comfort level wise, only one of them was comfortable going off at a time. And you're trying to implement the new offensive principles, and they were, maybe not finding, and this is a team level thing, not an individual level thing, the right, hey, how much and when to attack mismatches or attack one-on-one. But what we said throughout all that is like, there's not actually a good basketball reason that eventually Pascal and Scottie can't be really effective offensively together. Now, some of that's lineup dependent, but like you said, it's happened 9 times in 26 games, and I'd imagine that has been more common as the season's gone on.
Yeah, I think it's part of this. Obviously, is just Scottie is making this jump offensively, and I thought yesterday he didn't even hit many jumpers or anything like that, but he played a lot of bully ball, and it really, really worked to great effect. I think Darko is slowly finding more and more ways to get him involved too. Again, him with the bench lineups is starting to look better. And I think that's, again, if you want to credit Darko,
I want to give a little bit of pause to that, though, because
okay.
I tweeted last night, I think this is I think I said it's a top 2. And then looking at the lineup data, their 2 best performances both came against the Hornets. That was a bench heavy group with a lot of starters out.
Okay.
So look, obviously the process was better. That group was really, really active defensively, and Scottie looked good offensively within that group. I would just caution against thinking it's a big step forward when you were playing against Leaky Black and Nick Smith Jr. And guys like that. Not to disrespect those guys, but the quality of competition in that game, say, versus what the Nuggets bench is going to look like tomorrow night is a pretty big jump, because those Nuggets bench units are going to have Jokic or Murray, and then a lot of good depth guys. So good to see it take a step in the right direction, but I would not extrapolate too much yet.
So you're saying, is there anything sustainable to you though?
Yeah, I mean, I think the defensive side of those groups is they could have been defending like that for a long time. There's no reason for that group not to be a high energy group. Now, some of the things they did yesterday, Charlotte was a little sloppy with their closeout principles and things like that. It opened up like instances where Precious could drive past the closeout and get into the paint. Precious is capable of that, but a lot of better defensive teams are going to stunt at Precious and make sure that drive isn't there. They're not going to treat him like that as a kind of pick and pop 3 up top. But yeah, I mean, anytime you significantly win your minutes, that's something you're they had a 5-minute stretch where they were +6 to start the fourth quarter. It helped swing the game. And mostly it's a positive to me for Scottie. But yeah, I mean, good to see it. I'm not going to advocate for 12, 15 minutes a game of that particular group.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. It does seem like Darko wants to continue with it, and that's why I'm asking you if there are any sort of marginal progressions, because I think if we're going to stick with it, we need to
Mhm.
see some sort of progress with it. Obviously, a big part of that is just you need Gary to be able to perform the way he did last night, and of course, with those bench scoring groups, I feel like offense really compound where it's like they get a bad offensive possession or they get an empty offensive possession, and then they really don't get back on defense, and all of a sudden things that should really be like, okay, you miss a shot, things happen, right? But you don't compound that mistake. I feel like they were compounding those mistakes a lot yesterday. So, or not a lot yesterday, but just in general. So Gary actually making shots, I thought brought really great relief to that group. Did you see the same thing I saw there?
Yeah, there was definitely that. I mean, Gary is going to provide a little bit of that spacing regardless,
Yeah.
because teams treat him like a shooting
No, but
threat.
he needs to finish.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And look, you need to finish not only because you need the shots to fall, but because, as a game goes on, if you're not hitting those shots, a defense probably eases up a little bit on their coverage of you, and that tightens the spacing. That 5-man unit, by the way, that we saw close the game last night has played 37 minutes together this year.
Okay.
That is a tiny sample for a lineup group, and there's going to be some noise in there. But
Oh, well, let
in
me hear
those
it.
37 minutes, plus 24.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. And it's not like they won their minutes by like that much last night. I thought the Hornets made a couple of tough buckets in between just to sort of respond. But yeah, no, I mean, I think there's obviously what you could see on the court in terms of the results, but also you could think about just on paper how you could attack and what kind of synergistic like elements would go
Mhm.
into that. And I thought that, yeah, I mean, there's certain games where you're not going to have to close with a center. Like you look across the league, a lot of teams close small. And when you do decide to close small, you obviously need good spacing around your guys. So, I mean, typically late game offense is just mismatch basketball. Now, sometimes I do wish they got to that a little bit earlier, but again, these are questions that if we ever get Darko again on the show, we can ask Darko. But we do have Dennis Schröder joining us on the line. Dennis, what's going on? What's going on? We got the German Playboy of the Year award winner, Dennis.
What's up, man? How you doing?
Yeah, tell us about that, man. What does that mean to you to be named Playboy of the Year in Germany?
I mean, it's all about recognition for me. I mean, we had a great year, great summer with the national team. Of course, to get an award like that is always great. Especially for my legacy growing up in Germany. Little black dude. Growing up there, having hard times, and then get the recognition after a great summer is always great.
Yeah, that's gotta feel amazing. I was looking at some of the other voters or the other people who receive votes, and I think you finished above the defense minister or something like that. I was very confused with this list. I thought it was going to be some soccer players, but I guess German soccer's in a bad spot right now.
I mean, yeah, I mean they have a big summer coming up
Yeah, they
in
do.
Germany, so I'm gonna be there, support them. Hopefully they're going, end up winning it.
Yeah. Speaking of winning it, the
Yeah,
Hornets
yeah.
game.
You guys have a big summer coming up on the German basketball side too, by the way. But last night, you guys beat the Hornets. Kind of a pattern we've seen a little bit. You guys start a little bit slow, but figure it out as the game goes on. I wanted to ask you specifically about the lineup that you guys closed with. So it was the four of you who normally start, and then Gary Trent in the place of Jakob Poeltl. That was effective last night. What do you think about that lineup makes it effective for the five of you, at least offensively?
I think Gary, I mean, when he is aggressive and he's always a threat, to shoot threes. He's a knockdown shooter in this league. Gives us a lot on the defensive end as well. His scrappiness, his activity, and Yak. I mean, sometimes for Yak it's always tough because it's like everybody playing around the 3-point line, and it's always for Yak a little bit, tougher. So coach doing a great job just adjusting game by game what we need to, win the game. So it's always great for the coaches to read it But I think Gary doing a great job just being ready. And I mean, he had a great performance last night.
In addition to the lineup change with Gary in there, you guys were running things through Pascal and Scottie a lot. How much does your role change when the lineup switches from one with Jakob to more of a 5-out lineup?
Nothing really. I mean, whatever it takes to win a basketball game at the end of the day. That's how I've been. Um, don't matter if I, score 5 points or 25 points. Whatever the team needs to win a basketball game, and I think everybody got to buy into that. And if we do that, we be in great shape.
So you mentioned earlier about Darko making the adjustments. So something that we've been tracking a lot on the show. I'm not gonna lie, we've been a little hard on Darko. All right, I know you guys are close, but I want to hear your perspective from being in the locker room and being in around a lot of teams and a lot of coaches. How is Darko with adjustments? You feel like is he a guy who likes to adjust between games? Is he adjusting mid game? How open is he to suggestions from you guys like the vets? I would love to hear about your perspective on Darko's adjustments.
I mean, he always listens to everybody. I think to all the players, if people got suggestions how we play or how we, dead night, it don't matter who we play, the coverages, and he always listens. He's open to it, and I think he's doing a great job with that. I think in-game adjustments, once everybody buys into the system and it don't work, then we can switch up. I think,
Okay.
and if everybody got to buy into it first to the system. Everybody got to believe it that it works. If that happens, and it don't work, then of course we can adjust. I feel like that's just me personally, my opinion.
Yeah.
And Darko, I mean, like I said, he always open up for conversations if somebody don't like the coverage or whatever we in that night. He always asks after, we finish shoot around, do you guys have any questions or opinions of what we have to do or, to be better in the game? So he's always a great listener, always great communicating to everybody. But in-game adjustments is always it's a tricky question,
Yeah.
And I think we did a great job with Terry Rozier. I mean, he was Bonner last night as well, but we did a great job of blitzing him, showing him different coverages as well. So I mean, if we do that, I think we really tough to beat.
You guys did do a better job on Terry because he was going off in the first half, and he could definitely make some tough shots. That's how the Hornets beat you guys last time too. I mean, you guys got down, but you guys came back. But then they made a whole bunch of tough shots down the stretch. I'm curious in terms of, so you mentioned sometimes players will suggest adjustments. Like who's suggesting that? Who has the ideas? Like because I want to know who's the future coaches in this team.
I mean, we got the OGs in the locker room, so I got to shout them out. Gary Temple for sure. Thad Young. But it's really everybody who chipping in. If something has to be said or something people don't like, Pascal sometimes says something, or I think this should be better. And good open communication where we just talk about, the things, the coverage, I think is always great. And we're taking advantage of it. And it's great to have a coach like that who really listens and don't just have his way.
Yeah. All right, last question on Darko at least. But have you guys had some conversations about any lineup changes? Because this is something that we asked Darko a lot. Darko is, I think he said maybe he wants to see the starting lineup for another 1 or 2 games and then decide. I wonder if that kind of conversation happens with you guys as well about potential changes in the lineup.
I mean, we never talked about it. I think we just want to go, game by game. Every single game, go out there. Whoever plays first, whoever starts, just to go out there, give everything you have, and win basketball games. That's what it comes down to. But I mean, I think how we play right now. If we can't stack up games like that and just keep getting better and don't, reset every time when we win a game, then the conversation's not going to happen, obviously. So we just got to be better. coming out, the games, the first 5 minutes in the first quarter and the first 5 minutes in the third quarter. And if we do that, we'd be in great shape.
So your next game will be a tough one to keep it rolling. It's the Denver Nuggets. This is the defending champs, a team that you got a long look at last year in the playoffs. What do you remember more? Like, what stands out most about that playoff series against them that you were in?
I mean, last year that was really hard to stop. They had all around just great players. Of course, a superstar or two of the superstars who was really unwilling willing to pass the ball and being unselfish. And leading the way, it don't matter if they score 5 points or 10 points. If they get a W, they're really happy about winning the game. And I mean, if you have stars like that who, leads by example and making sure that everybody's on the same page, is nothing you can do there. And if you have around those great role players they had, with Aaron Gordon, Brown, both Browns did a great job. Then Caldwell Pope, MPJ. I mean, it's really hard to stop them. And tomorrow, like I said, though, it's every single game we want to take it as a challenge and try to win every single game. So we're going to try to come out hard tomorrow and try to, win a basketball game.
So this is obviously a Canadian program, you in Canada. We got to ask about Jamal Murray. He's one of our stars. What was it like going up against Jamal Murray? What's the toughest thing about covering Jamal Murray?
Jamal is, playing with the Joker makes him special. He's fitting perfectly with the Joker. The Joker, like I said, how he passed the ball, how they play pick and roll. I mean, you got to guard both of them. Both of them are really threats. So you got to be really careful with shooting. I mean, mid-range shots, floaters, getting to the lane, really athletic too still. So it's really, really tough to guard him. But I mean, for me, what I did in the series, just picking up full court, because every time when he brings it up so easy and he don't have no pressure to it, then it's just, like practice for him.
Mm-hmm.
They're too good of the players to just pick up at the 3-point line and then just guard him. So for me, it was always, picking up full court, make him, earn every single thing he doing. And I mean, I don't know what the coverage is tomorrow, but that's what I have in mind right now, just, to make it really difficult on him.
When you play against top international stars like this, like my guess is that you're just focused on the Raptors right now, but does a part of you think like, man, I might see Jamal in the Olympics this year for Canada. I might see Jokic in the Olympics this year for Serbia. How much is, Germany's summer ahead on your brain when you play these top international guys?
I mean, it's both competitions. It's always respect. And of course, I know they're superstars in the league and they're playing great basketball. But at the end of the day, for me, it's just another, basketball game. At the end of the day, everybody's going to go out there, compete the hardest you can and try to get a W. And but I mean, it's always great to see those guys internationally at FIBA and in the NBA. And you get to, talk and talk about the summer or whatever. And it's always great seeing them.
Yeah, definitely. We're looking forward to the World Cup, man. Or not the World Cup, the Olympics. If it's anything like the World Cup, it's gonna be amazing. All right, last question. We got to ask you about Jeff Teague because we keep coming back to this subject. We always run out of time. So to set this up, there was a Jeff Teague went on, I think, a show with Shams and Lou Williams, who another former teammate of yours in Atlanta. And Lou Williams asked Jeff Teague, who is the most annoying trash talker you played against? And Jeff Teague answered that it was you. And Lou Williams kind of laughed about it because he's like, well, I was teammates with these guys. I remember what it was like in practice. I believe that was your rookie year. He was one of the he was vets. He was kind of injured that year. But yeah, what were those practices like, especially when you were a rookie coming in and Jeff was obviously the starter, but you were the backup. What was the competition like at that time?
Oh, really, really competitive. I was, 18, 19 at the time.
Yeah.
Was still a young kid, coming from Germany. coming to Atlanta was a culture shock for me. So at the end of the day, just, try to compete, just picking up full court, just, being engaged every single practice. He was playing, of course, but I didn't have, too much playing time. So I always, in practice came out 110% just to be out there and try to get a chance to go out there. And that's probably what he didn't like. With Lou and Jeff, I didn't never had really outside. I was not really outside of basketball with them. But at the end of the day, I take it as a positive note. Because he helped me too, I gotta say. Offensively, defensively, he always, talked to me as a vet and told me to, like, one day it's gonna be your team. And he always said great things. And so I don't have nothing bad to say about them. So yeah.
Well, it was interesting because a few years later, when you guys were on different teams, I don't know if you remember this, but I think this was 2019. You were on OKC. Jeff Teague was on Minnesota. And there was a game where I looked it up. Jeff Teague, you guys got into a little pushing match, and then Jeff Teague pushed you twice, and he got ejected from this game when he was playing in Minnesota. Do you remember this incident at all? This is 2019 now.
Yeah. 2019. Yeah, I think, was it in OKC?
It was in OKC, yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember that. I don't know what it was about though. So like I said, competitive people. He knew what happened in Atlanta. He went somewhere. I got his spot, and we just going at it in a basketball game. So that's what happens. In the NBA, that's the most competitive league, the best league in the world. So people always want to prove a point, and I'm always there for it, and I'm never gonna, back down on any situations. But I still have a good relationship with him, I would say. Every time when something good happened, I text him and or DM him, and he's doing the same. So no hard feelings there.
That's good. That's good. All right, no beef here. I'm gonna stop trying. The funniest thing too is I was watching that video of that ejection after you guys pushed each other. You were not ejected. He was ejected. There was one OKC assistant coach that came over to pull you away because when people you guys didn't scrap but when two guys start pushing each other, everybody rushes onto the court, and it's usually the assistants who pull you off. You know which assistant pulled you off for OKC?
2019.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's either Dave or Darko was on the team. Probably Darko.
It was Darko, man. It was Darko. Darko came to get you off the court, man. But I didn't realize Darko had this big beard at the time. I almost didn't recognize him.
Yeah, Darko. Like I said, we go way back, man. So it's always great to be around him.
Yeah.
I think special character. He's gonna be great in this league. He's been around the game 27, 30 years, so he's great.
All right, we gotta be nicer to Darko, man. But this Darko with the beard look was kind of hard. He looked a lot more serious, Now he's called clean shaven. He looks all young again. It's different. So, all right, Dennis, we'll let you go to wherever you're going. Drive safe. You're not driving, obviously. Someone's driving for you. But appreciate you, and we'll call you again next week.
All right, man. Appreciate you guys.
Dennis Schröder. No beef. All
right.
I'm a little disappointed. I'm not gonna lie.
Also, it was years ago. He's probably downplaying it a little bit to some degree too. I never know how honest the guy's gonna be about I called him this and I did this to him.
No, you're right. Who remembers old trash talk anyway? But no, I got to figure out a way to get Darko to bring that beard back, man. He basically had your beard essentially. I want to share a photo of this on Twitter as well, but. Yeah, he essentially had your facial.
Yeah, look, I feel like we've told Darko enough this week. We should maybe leave his aesthetic choices
right.
Speaking of throwback, I met Tom Haberstroh at Sloan Sports Analytics Conference like a decade ago when I was first starting out.
Of course you did.
Incredibly smart guy. Let's take a break and talk to him.
Let's do it. We're going to take that break. I've been your host, Willow. You've been listening to The Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Welcome back to The Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. I'm your host, Wayne Malou. Continue to be joined by co-host Blake Murphy. And we are joined on the line by Tom Haberstroh. This is the longest title that we've had in here, but he's a very impressive person.
I just wanted to make sure we shout out all. There's the Finder on Substack, obviously doing analytics insider work for the Trailblazers, and then over the last several years, excellent work with the charitable organization Hoops for ALS. So we've had that on the baseball side as well with Sarah Lang. So Tom, welcome, appreciate you, man, for all of those reasons.
Hey, that's very kind of you to shout out Hoops for ALS. Yeah, it's been a very big part of my life over the last few years, and I appreciate that.
So over at the Finder on Substack, where your writing is primarily now, man, the timing on this piece. So you write about James Harden's unguardable isolations. You've got the data on, he's doing a little less, but they've been so effective. And then he just cooks last night. Man, can you, for our audience who maybe didn't see that piece, can you take us through a little bit about how James Harden's offense has fit with this Clippers team?
Yeah, I do a weekly Tom's title tiers at tomthefinder.com, which is basically my way of just getting myself kind of oriented with the week's NBA action. And me personally, it's fun to just get kind of reset on Sunday night, just like, where's everyone ranking? What team do I want to feature this week? And as I'm writing on Sunday, I'm like, oh, James Harden is his ISOs one-on-one, just on an island. When he gets a guy on an island, he's as good as he's ever been. And so I started looking at the numbers, and it turns out that he's not just the best he's ever been. It's the best that we've seen in the last 13 years of the player tracking era. And no one's talking about it. And I was like, all right, well, I'm writing about this. And then he goes and he plays the Indiana Pacers. And Blake, you know how it is when, as a writer, you see a number or you see something, some trend, and you're like, all right, I'm hitting this. And then tonight, hopefully it works out. And then he just went Nova. He just napalmed Buddy Hield, Obi Toppin, and the Indiana Pacers, which honestly these days isn't really all that much of an accomplishment. But he, in the last 2 games, I'll just put it in perspective for you, James Harden has scored 40 points on 19 isolations.
Oh, my God.
40 points on 19 plays. Some of those are misses, but some of those are 3-point makes, 3-point shot fouls, and also and ones on 3-pointers. He is just absolutely on another level. And I think people are kind of just like, they're the Clippers and it's James Harden.
Yeah.
And so we can't really talk about it in the regular season. And so I wanted to write about it. And then, of course, he just absolutely eviscerated the Pacers. It was cool to see. Just, it's weird in the NBA where it's like regular season stuff, December stuff, you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt, because we know 4 months later, everyone just erases this from their memory. They just get neuralized from the Men in Black stuff. I just think it's cool when guys are cooking like that. We should talk about it.
Yeah. Well, James Harden did tell us. I mean, he did say, I'm not a system player. I am the system. And yeah, when you are literally doing this on isolations, you are the system.
The average James Harden isolation the last 2 games has been more effective than a wide open layup.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the points per possession there. That's crazy.
2.1. So if you told me, would I rather have Giannis at the rim dunking 19 times in a row or James Harden ISOs, I think 99% of fans are going to say, oh, I want Giannis dunking 19 times. And the answer is no. James Harden on an isolation on an island is more effective, more efficient, more profitable than Giannis dunking 19 times in a row.
Yeah, this is the 2019 MVP debate.
Yeah.
The run and dunk man versus a man who actually has skills, which I love James Harden beefing with him over this. It's great. I want players to care about this. What do you make about the Clippers overall? Because obviously they're on a nice roll here. They've had some pretty impressive wins. And obviously the health of their stars is always going to be the biggest thing. And they have been healthy for the most part. Paul George missed 1 or 2 games, but he's back. It seems to really work. And now I'm actually kind of not scared of the Clippers, but it does seem like, okay, wow, this is
Scary
very much a
hours,
team.
Will? Scary hours?
They're scary. They got 3 stars that at all times can really cook you, and that's very, very dangerous. So I would love to hear your thoughts on the Clippers and how it's fitting.
Yeah, so I do 5 tiers, 5-star system, title tiers, where the number one, I guess the 5-star rating is reserved for the perfect teams. Like the teams where I'm like, they don't need anything else. They're as good as anybody. Boston Celtics and the Denver Nuggets. Then I got my 4-star tier, which is, usually held for a team that's got like one move away or feel like they just have a missing piece. And to me, the Clippers are on that tier, the second tier in the NBA in terms of title contenders. Because look, if Kawhi Leonard's healthy, and there's a train going by, so I apologize if this is shaking. There's no earthquake here. I'm just telling you, there's a train right by my house. So Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, they've missed one game this year collectively. Yeah. Kawhi Leonard hasn't missed a game. He's played in all 4 back-to-backs. He's averaging 25 points a game on those second night of back-to-backs. And if I told you guys, as Raptors guys, that this would happen, you guys would be like, no, there's no chance that Kawhi Leonard at this point. Sorry, it feels like there's a T-Rex. There might be raptors outside my house right now.
I'm sorry, are you in Jurassic Park?
But to your point, like this is the most games in a row Kawhi has played since the championship run.
Yeah. Kawhi Leonard's 16th in the NBA in total minutes played. It's kind of amazing.
He's never ranked in the top 20 except for this season. He's never ranked top 20 minutes. Wow. And then at this point in his career, he's 16th. And like his true shooting percentage, everything, he's outstanding. So when you got Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and James Harden healthy and playing at this level, they probably deserve to be in that top tier because that's kind of baked into the Clippers analysis is they can't possibly do this for stay healthy. If they're healthy in the playoff run, I think they deserve to be in that top tier. I think the only thing that's missing is just like I would say like a Dennis Smith Jr. type on their roster, just a lockdown point guard who can, soak up some of those Russell Westbrook minutes. And then if they get like a lockdown point guard defender, I mean, what else do you need?
I mean, I guess the question would just still be like, can they rely on Zubac defensively that much? Because I do worry because he is slow-footed, but
I mean, it's certainly like you're looking at, well, you got to look for Jokic. You got to play Jokic at some point, and you got to play Gobert at some point, probably. So maybe you're less worried. Like, I think you're less worried about, as a pivot point here, the Warriors than maybe you would be in the past. Tom, you've done a ton of fun work on the Warriors this year around like Chris Paul and Scott Foster's beef. You've got a graphic up on the Blazers broadcast with the analytics on Draymond's disciplinary actions. It's been fun, if a little worrisome. And the latest, Steph's 3-point streak ends, and he has the 2 longest 3-point streaks in league history himself. What do you make of where this Warriors team is at? And you mentioned the Clippers. Hey, maybe they're only one move or just good health away. This is the first time since the intentional year where it really feels like the Warriors are maybe a couple steps away.
Yeah, from a content standpoint, like 60% of my paid subscriptions at TomTheFinder.com is like Warriors stuff. Like, it's amazing. I mean, it's been such a controversial year. They're toxic, radioactive, Draymond Green stuff. And then, of course, the Scott Foster, Chris Paul dynamic, which the numbers are astounding. I think it's 3-17 against the spread. Chris Paul's teams are in the playoffs with Scott Foster officiating. I'm not just talking about like 3-17 win-loss record. I'm talking about Vegas is saying, here is the favorite team, here's the favorite team, and here's the underdog, and here's the point spread. And Chris Paul's teams have not covered in 17 of the 20 playoff games in his career with Scott Foster officiating. Then you throw in the research I did on Draymond Green with Steph Curry out. He is 4 times as likely to be ejected in a game when Steph Curry is out versus when Steph Curry is playing in the game. And then Rudy Gobert, like, the thing about his comment was he just doesn't want to play. And he's kind of like the laughing stock of the league, right? Rudy Gobert. But he was totally right about that. He was absolutely right about the fact that Draymond Green, when Steph's not playing, he just doesn't want to play out there, as evidenced by the numbers. And the Warriors just, they need help. I don't know if it's Pascal Siakam. I think it's really interesting to think about, like, what would the Raptors, what would Masai want in a trade? I think you're going to have Moses Moody, Kuminga, Pods, either 2 or the 3 of those young guys in a Pascal Siakam trade. But like, the Warriors don't have a lot of draft picks at their disposal. And if you're sending Pascal Siakam to the Warriors, that their draft picks get worse, right? So that the value on those draft picks aren't as good. So it's almost like you're sabotaging your own draft capital if you acquire the Warriors picks going forward. But they need like a Lauri Markkanen. They need a Pascal Siakam, a second scorer that can take a lot of the pressure off of Klay and Steph Curry. Right now, they don't have that guy. And I think at this point, the Warriors can't be considered a real true title contender until they get that second scorer that really relieves a lot of the pressure off of Draymond, Klay, and Steph.
I have no doubt Pascal would help them with the scoring. And that especially you get Pascal more spacing around him, I think he can really do a lot of great things, especially as a secondary scorer. Last time we saw Pascal as a secondary scorer was in 2019 when he was with Kawhi, and I think he's a much better player than he was at that time. But I do wonder from the Warriors side, like, aren't they giving up a lot of rotation players? The thing with the Warriors is, like, they also kind of need a lot of these guys. And, of course, like, whatever. You really, put them to their feet to the fire and say, look, it's just going to cost you some young guys for Pascal Siakam. And probably, I don't know, Chris Paul's expiring contract or Wiggins or whatever, just to make the salaries match. But at the same time, like, every time I turn on the Warrior game, like, they need these guys. They need Moody. They need Kuminga. They need Pods. I'm telling you, Warrior fans, they're probably devastated to lose Pods, even if it is for an established all-star.
I know. Can you imagine, like, if I had told you you're going to trade Pods at draft night? Let's just say, like, after draft night. Like, it's going to take Pods to get Pascal Siakam, right? It's like, of course, yeah, we do that deal in a heartbeat. But he's good. I really like him as a player. And I'm wondering, Wiggs, you guys in Toronto, what is the feeling around Andrew Wiggins? Is he someone you guys want on the Raptors as like a feel good homecoming story, or is it a matter of like, I don't know, it seems like a buy low opportunity. He doesn't seem like he's the guy that you want to build around.
Like, I'm going to Eurostep this and hand this to you.
Look, I think at this point, given what has happened this year and given what's left on the contract there, I think he's probably viewed as a slight negative asset, like not even a neutral asset. You would use him to make salary math work, but he's not changing your like asset evaluation. Like if they say, hey, Wiggins is coming back in a Siakam deal, that's, to me, it's like, okay, we're still at zero assets, but the cap math works, if that's fair. Like I think he will turn back into a useful player, but given the contract, I don't see how you could be like, yeah, that's a key chip in the positive column.
Yeah. Listen, if the Raptors get Andrew Wiggins, we will try to sell it as like
this would be the Andrew Wiggins show.
It's homecoming. Raptors back in the day, they wanted to tank for Wiggins. It's like over a decade ago now, and they never did it, and now he's back. And but I think realistically, it'll be difficult just because he is having this down year. And I'm really very confused about what's happened with Wiggins the last 2 years. Like last year, he like just was away from the team for a long time before the playoffs, and now he's come back. And I'm not sure if these are connected or not, but he's really underperforming. So it's hard to sell in a basketball perspective. So it'll be a feel-good story for like maybe 2 days, but it'll fade. You know what I mean?
All right, Tom, we only have you for about 90 seconds more. So short one, but you're a numbers guy who I trust. What should we do with the stats for the in-season tournament final and to a lesser extent the playing games? Should those guys just have an 83-game season and we can avoid the Oscar Tshiebwe stuff?
Yeah, I think the in-season tournament 83rd game thing absolutely should count to your regular season totals. It was so absurd, the fact that Oscar Tshiebwe did not have his first points in that game in the most important game of his season, of the Indiana Pacers season, of the Lakers season. It just doesn't count. Like Anthony Davis has a 40-20 in the championship, doesn't count. Playing tournament, you're rewarding teams for being like mediocre by adding stats to their resume in the regular season. I don't think those stats should count to your regular season, but absolutely for the in-season tournament, getting to the championship, your stats should count there. And the sad thing is we would not have had that ridiculous Giannis whole controversy without it. So now I'm kind of conflicted, Blake. I'm like, wait a minute. I feel like we should have had that moment because it was one of the great moments of the season. But yeah, next year, you got to count the stats.
Like the Warriors, silly but good content. Tom, thanks so much for taking the time, my man. Keep up the great work on the Blazers and at Tom the Finder.
Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, fellas.
Yeah, we got Oscar Tshiebwe is going to be an incredible trivia question.
I'm not joking that I would get a Indiana Mad Ants Oscar Tshiebwe jersey at this point.
Nah, you're a sicko. All right, we're going to take a break. I've been your host, Walu. You've been listening to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. When we come back, let's talk about Canada basketball and more of the Raptors. Welcome back to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. I'm your host, Wayne Lou. I'm joined by co-host Blake Murphy, and we are joined by one of my favorite people just to see in the Raptors media space. So positive every time you're around. Just bring a smile on my face. Haven't been in the Raptors game in a while, but Oren Weisfeld, man, writer at large. What's going on, buddy?
Thank you for having me. I think it's ironic because I'm very optimistic about the Raptors. I think I have been the last few years compared to most people, but like you said, not not the most upbeat guy, maybe
Yeah.
at points.
Can,
But
can I ask you, are you still optimistic about this season?
no.
Oh, okay. Was there a breaking
like-
point for you?
Yeah, actually, the Nets game was probably the breaking
Oh,
point.
good one. Nice.
Because I've been very down on Brooklyn for a while
Yeah.
and like kind of surprised with the kind of media reaction that they've gotten since the KD and Kyrie trades, because I just think the team doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And for
Mhm.
them to be like this far ahead of the Raptors this season kind of just caught me very off guard and made me really rethink a lot of my preconceived Raptors kind of notions. And yeah, like even the Pirtle trade, I was like, Blake and me talked about this. I was definitely like, we have to wait and see on it before we can judge it right away.
Okay.
I've waited and I've seen, and the Raptors are about to give away like maybe a top 10 pick as of right now.
Yeah,
And
they waited and seed and then paid to see the flop as well. Like they
Yeah. No, they really
went
did chase a good
little too
shot.
far, and yeah.
and on top of that, Pirtle's not playing well. And
Yeah.
they played 15 minutes last night. So it was a lose-lose. And to me, yeah, like it's definitely turned, my opinion.
So last night's game, there's obviously some, anything positive you're going to say runs to the edge of maybe damning with faint praise, right? They come back after digging another hole against the Hornets team, missing 5 or 6 rotation players, but they do it. They pull it off. They kind of do the rotation things and the point of attack things that we had been asking to see. Come fourth quarter, it works really well. And you tweeted out after the game, Scottie can officially will his team to wins against terrible opponents. Now that too is kind of, it's more damning the team.
Has
with
Raptors
faint
Twitter found
praise.
you about that yet? Because, they're on alert right now, man. They already got Eric and Aaron this morning. So,
Who's
just
Yeah,
Oh,
kidding.
you
Eric
think
too, Kareem?
they could
Oh,
turn
yeah,
that
yeah.
on me and make it seem like I'm being mean to Scottie?
So I took
I'm
it
just
as
saying, it's
I took it as
possible.
mean to the
Yeah.
team more than
Yeah.
anything. Like the tone of it to me suggested, well, Scottie shouldn't have to do this against the Hornets and their B
Yeah,
squad.
contextualize for us.
But in general, though, when a player is taking a jump, how important is it to you that, like, yeah, on a night your team maybe isn't playing the best basketball, you can at least get them to a win they maybe don't deserve outside of you?
Yeah, like maybe this was the next question, but I do think that is the step most young stars take. Most young stars get to bad teams, right? And they have to learn how to win. And the first step in that is winning against other bad teams. And so to me, this is an important step. Like obviously the Hornets were really banged up last night, but for Scottie to go out there, and it was also a bit of an unfair tweet because Pascal played pretty well. But for me, Scottie was the best guy from opening tip-off.
Mhm.
There's been more and more games this season where that's been the case. Scottie's been the best guy from the opening tip, and it hasn't always resulted in wins, but that to me is just a major building block for him personally, because what have we criticized him for a long time is he doesn't really start going until the fourth quarters. That was a criticism for a long time. This season, it's been much, much better. I think just his energy off the bounce has been really good. And it might not always show up in the box score. I know if you look at his scoring numbers, his fourth quarter scoring is really high, and the other quarters aren't quite there. But to me, it's the way he sets the tone for the team as a playmaker. And even those aren't always assists because some of these guys aren't great finishers from all sorts of ranges. But he's just been so good to start games. And yeah, it's nice to see it kind of result in a win against, even if it's against the Hornets. If they lost that game, that would have been a really, really bad loss.
Yeah, right. It's a skill set you don't want a guy to ever have to use,
Yeah.
but it's nice when he has it.
Yeah, I mean, this is also like part of life as like number 1, number 2 guys. Like your team's gonna kind of suck in December and have low energy against the Hornets, and it's up to you to decide: am I gonna flip the switch and will them to this victory? And it's not as simple as that. But I'm sometimes I like to watch for the small moments in the games, and there were moments last night where you could tell he was like demanding the ball.
Mhm.
He's like, I'm gonna get in this post. I'm gonna lock my defender behind me. I'm gonna put my hand up, and I'm gonna gesture at you until you give me this damn ball.
And if you don't, I'm going to fight everyone for the offensive rebound when you miss.
And I'm gonna block the shot. Like any opportunity I can get near this ball, I'm gonna do it. And I just feel like, to me, what that says is like there's an ownership of the situation. Whether or not the Raptors win or lose, I'm gonna own that. That's what you need from in any context of any sport. From your top guys, and I think that you're seeing that from him. I mean, overall too, it's interesting because we talked about Pirtle to start this thing. It does seem like a lot of his success this season has come with not just Jakob off the floor. Let's maybe take Jakob out of it, but it's like more and more spacing when he can either get downhill against no help defenders, or when he draws those help defenders, he's able to pick out extra passes. So Oren, I'd love to hear your thoughts about Scottie's progression in that regard, because it seems like the bench, every time they bring Scottie with the bench, they're featuring him, but almost as a small ball five kind of thing to get him going. And I think it's really working.
Yeah, so real quick to bounce off your point about like demanding the ball. One thing the coaching staff has been dating back to Nick Nurse kind of not complaining about, but said about Scottie is that he needs to use his voice more, right? And just a quick example, like, because a lot of people have brought this up on Twitter, is the possession where Precious Achiuwa gets an offensive rebound. Scottie's wide open, waiting for the three. He doesn't pass it to him. He goes up and he doesn't score.
Is it the 1-on-3?
Yeah. Scottie reamed him out for the
Good.
whole possession back on defense, right? And yeah, you can take it two ways. One is, I don't know, be nicer to your teammates maybe, but overall it's
That's
like, no,
Darko's
that's
job.
good.
Don't worry.
Like,
That's Darko's got that covered.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's good to see Scottie taking ownership in that way, like telling, especially in those bench units, like being the vocal guy and telling them what the right play is, right? So just to your point, that's an example that came to my head. In terms of the bench stuff, it's interesting. I think the next step almost for Scottie is to be more aggressive. This is something David Thorpe has always said on your show since the draft, is like Scottie is at heart a point guard, and his first option is always pass. And the superstar leap often comes, you look at Tyrese Halliburton, it often comes when guys are ready to be really aggressive scorers and take 4, 5, 6 shots in a row. Scottie doesn't do that a whole lot, unless maybe in the fourth quarters, right? So I think that's the next step. And I think in those bench units, regardless of the spacing, like I'm sure that does play a factor in it. Him playing center, getting different looks. But I think with those bench units, he just has more freedom and he takes it a bit more upon himself to be aggressive as a scorer too.
When he's on the floor with 3 or 4 bench players, usage goes up to almost 25%. That's a number we were tracking earlier in the year,
nice.
and the true shooting percentage, his scoring efficiency had really suffered, especially in those 4-man bench units. It has come up of late. He has, I warned earlier that having success twice against the Hornets bench, especially banged up, we maybe don't want to run with Scottie in the bench is working now, but Scottie's effectiveness in those units has at least individually gone up, because we're now seeing, the true shooting percentage of those situations up to 56%. Earlier in the season was down sub 50, which is like a really rough spot to be in if you're the key piece of an offense. And again, at the time, I thought that spoke more to the guys around him and what he was being asked to do. We're seeing him find more ways to score efficiently while also kind of quarterbacking those groups.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit funny to think about. Just like, okay, the season's a little bit like upsetting. They break your heart in some of these games. It's usually those kind of games that you mentioned in Brooklyn where it's like you don't rate the opponent at all, but then the Raptors lose. Like for me, that was when they lost to Portland early in the season. It was like,
when they lost to Charlotte the other week too. Like you get down 16 and like you just run out of time to erase that, even though you play better than them significantly the rest of the way.
Yeah, for when they lost to Hawks, like things like that where it's like you think that the other team sucks, but the Raptors still lose to them. What does that mean about the Raptors? But at the same time, despite that overall like bitter taste when you watch the Raptors, the most important thing coming into the season was how is Scottie going to grow? And Scottie really has grown, and you've seen him take those leaps both in terms of his approach, as we're mentioning here, obviously with the 3-point shooting. That's something that's been really great, but it's just the overall impact that he's had, obviously, as a help defender. We saw a lot of that yesterday as well. Those help side blocks, they're really great. The other thing that I always thought about coming into this year was, okay, if the Raptors are going to be successful, you would need Scottie to make this jump to become an all-star level player. And whether he's going to make the all-star team or not, first off, we'll have many months to discuss this. Also, I think
although voting is now open. If you are a Raptor fan and you feel passionately about that, voting is now open, NBA.com/vote.
For my money, he has been one of the 12 best players in the Eastern Conference on the season. I know the Raptors haven't been successful, but he's an all-star in my book already. But, the other question is, if he makes this all-star jump, can Pascal also be an all-star? Because now we all of a sudden have 2 all-stars and you can be competitive. And I think start of the season, the answer was kind of no. It hasn't happened yet, but lately it's really coming on strong where both of these guys are having 20-plus points in the same game, having the same impact. Oren, I wanted to ask you, how are you seeing Pascal fit into all of this? Because we do have to acknowledge that the team dynamics have really changed, but he continues to find his way and remain productive.
He does, but to me, it's clunky. Like, we were watching the game last night together, and what happens to really get Pascal involved is, Pascal's best play type is probably the post up. and that's where he gets double teams from, and that's where you can play out of. But that's not exactly how it seems like Darko wants to play. He's been asked about this too, and he says, yeah, sometimes, but it's not my primary, option. So in terms of their fit together, it's clunky because Pascal is not, a great off-ball player because of the shooting. So the best way to utilize him is to put him in the post. And so what is Scottie doing when Pascal is in the post? He's not being optimized. So I think in terms of optimizing both at the same time, it's really, really hard. To Pascal's credit, he has fit into the system and played, quote unquote, unselfishly better than a lot of players on this team. And he's found his spots on the court, and the post up's a big one, but that's not it. But when I look at the way that the team wants to play and the way that kind of things, I would say the best way to describe it is like slow down when they play through Pascal. It just doesn't fit an identity of what Darko and Scottie are trying to do. And again, that's not any slight on Pascal. It's just kind of the players that they're trying to work with here. And if you guys disagree with me, feel free. But that's how it looks to me, as things slow down a little bit when they run through Pascal.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree to an extent, because if the primary goal is run this new system, then yes, I agree with you. If the primary goal is like build that system as a foundational principle, but then also win some basketball games, then I think they can fit together. Because I mean, once first of all, you're going to stagger them, so not all their minutes are together. You could obviously do a better job than we have seen spacing around them, which will open things up. But I also think there's a real value in if you have two guys who are similar size and not the exact same skill set, but some similar skills. How many teams in the NBA have a guy who have two guys to guard those two, let alone the teams that don't even have one? Like, we just saw a Hawks team that was, I know the Hawks split that series and won on aggregate, but like, they are small, very small. Even their big starting lineup with two centers was small relative to the Raptors. If you have Barnes and Siakam, and you let's say even within the system, you want to, start things over here, and then if nothing materializes, you quickly swing it to a second side action. Having one of those guys on both sides of the floor is important. Scottie's also a really good cutter. So, yes, sometimes you're going to need a connecting piece for Pascal's in the post, and it doesn't make sense for Scottie to be spacing around that on the strong side. So what is he doing? Maybe Scottie's 2 passes away instead of 1 pass away. You do have to get a little bit creative with that, but I think there can be a real kind of additive value in having, first of all, when you come down the floor, okay, which one of Scottie or Pascal have the mismatch? Because most teams don't have a guy for both of those. You can kind of run it that side, and then, once that does start to develop, yes, it's not an obvious fit post to shooter, but there's still a lot of value in having another guy who can really attack on the other side of the floor.
So, you know what? My role in this 3-person conversation is just always take a bigger picture. Bigger picture-wise, why does it matter if they play in the system or not? Does it not matter in terms of what is working? And, I feel like, to me, my preference would be for the Raptors to win games. That's really basic. I know it's like a... I would love to have long-term vision, but I live the Raptors show day to day, so I would personally like to see the Raptors win games. Having said that, though, if that is the goal, and I think that is still the stated goal for the team, is to win as many games as possible, don't you have to sort of find this marriage between the two? If they only did, Darko system things, then I don't think the Raptors would be anywhere near the playoffs. No offense. And that's partially because... it's a large part because they need to find the personnel to play that, Pascal included, honestly. But yeah, if they want to be any remotely level of competitive, then they do need to feature him in some way. And I thought, obviously it's the Hornets, but they did a good job of featuring him in the fourth quarter. Whether that's exclusive to Scottie or not, I guess that's the question I want for you, Oren. How important is it for the Raptors to optimize Scottie at every single turn and every single minute? Because
sorry, can I ask you to clarify the question? Are you saying optimize Scottie in terms of what works best with Scottie right now, or optimize Scottie in terms of what most fosters his development? Because I think those are two different things. One is you want Scottie to get his numbers right now and be the best Scottie possible. Yeah. The other is you're going to have some patience to let Scottie run 4-man bench units or run some pick and roll, etc., in ways that might not work yet but work long term. So if you could just clarify that part.
I think honestly, what fans would like to see is 1, but process-wise, what a coach might want to see is 2. But let's just say, for the sake of this conversation, 1. Well, how can we get Scottie the biggest stat line possible every game? Is that You know what I mean? Like that does feel like a stated goal for a lot of people watching this team.
He can do the rebounds and blocks himself, but yeah, the scoring needs some system orienting.
Yeah, no, but I guess is the question, what's the best way to get him to do that? Or like, does that matter?
No, what's the best way to get him to do that right now? And then does that matter as much as whether or not this team wins in immediacy?
Yeah. Probably to play him at point guard. And this goes back to what
Okay.
Blake was saying in terms of, if they are going to work together, Pascal and Scottie, and when I say it's clunky, like this is exactly what I mean. Like you have this win now factor of this works really well when we give the ball to Pascal in the post and play out of it.
Mhm.
But we tend to only go to it when we really desperately need to.
Yeah.
And that is just an inherently like uncomfortable thing. And then you have Scottie kind of running the show for, most of the game. So I guess it just depends on that. But yeah, like that's why I think it would be interesting to see a no point guard lineup and to change up the starters and to see Scottie really run stuff and just to see if the fit is a little more clear then. Like in terms of numbers, obviously Scottie's numbers are going to go up if he's running the show rather than Schröder is in the starting lineup, just like he kind of is in the bench. Obviously he can't do both, which maybe you could make the argument that it wouldn't change his numbers that much there. But yeah, like personally, I think in terms of development, the flip side of this question, like I'm not worried about what the Raptors are doing with Scottie's development. He's developing. To me, you don't need to give a guy like 40% usage to like develop him. Like guys learn by playing, by getting minutes. And that's kind of to me the point of the system too. And I know you guys are critical of it, but last year we were complaining how none of the young players played and how everyone's growth was stagnated. To me, the point of the system is everyone in this system has to be able to make decisions and has to be able to make plays. Does it look good? No, it looks terrible.
And there are still not really many young guys playing.
But are we seeing what guys are actually
Yes.
capable of better than we did last year? I think so. Yeah, I think we are. So that to me is kind of the advantage of the system. But like you said, the team is out here saying we want to win, we want to win. And on
To
the
be fair,
court,
they can't say the opposite. So.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
But on the court, it doesn't always look like winning is being prioritized. So again, that's a bit of a conflict.
So I have a pivot if we're
No, go
all
ahead.
right to
Go
move
on.
off of this particular thing. So Oren, a lot of what we're talking about here is, from the front office downward, how do all the pieces fit together? Are you trying to win more? And how does winning sometimes have some friction up against development? But there are some things the Raptors haven't done very well that have nothing to do with that. And Oren, I know from your tweets and from your quote retweets and stuff that rebounding appears to be your biggest frustration with this team. We've talked at times on this show, for me personally, I think it's the transition defense because that's an effort and attention to detail thing. What has frustrated you about the rebounding? And is that probably the thing that you think they're most capable of doing better at without changing any of these bigger picture things?
Yeah, without changing any of the bigger picture things, sure, they should be a better rebounding team. They might have to make some tweaks in terms of the rotations. I think we have a pretty big sample size of Precious Achiuwa at the 5 not being a great rebounder, Precious and Chris Boucher at the 5 and the 4 not being a great, I would say, just fit overall. And so there might be some little tweaks you have to make here and there, but this goes back to the point about the Pirtle trade too. Why do you make the Pirtle trade? Because you're a terrible rebounding team when Barnes is at the 5 and rim protecting team. Pirtle has shored up some of that in spurts, but this season it hasn't been good enough to the point where he's playing 15 minutes last night. And Precious, he is coming along a bit this season, but for all the good stuff Precious does, he doesn't rebound at a good level for a center. It hurts that Koloko is out and injured all season. And they have no other backup bigs. But this is again where you have to get creative, maybe. And like to me, like, okay, they won last night. Sure, I'm sure you guys are in agreement. There shouldn't be anything that's like off the table for this team. I think it could be interesting to start to play Precious and Pirtle off the bench together. Those lineups have looked good together when Precious had been the 4 with Pirtle. Obviously, then you're starting a smaller group, and against some bigs, it's just not going to look good. But like something has to change because why are they such a bad defensive team? I think the Hawks game was a great example of this, the one they lost. Their first effort on defense wasn't bad to me. Like their first shot effort was fine, but every time the Hawks got an offensive rebound, they scored after it. It felt like. So to me, a huge part of their defensive issues is the rebounding issues. And something, like effort, obviously effort can always improve, but to an extent, I do think some tweaks have to be made here to find groups that fit a little better on that front.
I don't think the rebounding is going to get any better the next couple games because they are obviously going to have to start big against Denver and Philly, who are their next two meetings, and then Utah's the number 2 offensive rebounding team in the league. So that's your kind of stretch run. Will, what about for you, man? I mentioned the transition defense. Oren has kind of selected the rebounding issues. Is there one thing with this team that you'd be like, you know what, that should be fixed, magic wand, that's easy enough without changing any big picture stuff?
That's a great question.
We took the two good ones.
It's hard to pick just one, you know? I mean, I think there are certain things that are frustrating, but they can't really do much about right now with the current roster is 3-point shooting. There are just a lot of moments where it's like, this is so much harder than it needs to be given this roster personnel. Like, for example, there was like a stretch last night where Dennis Schröder played a lot against Ish Smith. And I haven't seen this in at least 10 years of NBA basketball where both point guards were going aggressively under the screen on both on each other.
Low stuff too.
Yeah. Like it wasn't even, okay, we're setting the screen at 35 feet like they do for Trae Young. Like, no, we're setting the screen at 20 feet. Like it's the high school 3-point line. And they're going under. You know, and so I think to me when I watch it, I'm just like, this would work a lot better if you had any sort of ability to convert. So that's why I always mention 3-point shooting. But I think there's also like little things in general. Like usually when I look at my notes, you know, and I go back and watch the next day, like the things that stand out to me that really bother me are like guys not making the right read. Because so much, as you mentioned, you got to make decisions in this offense. In Darko's offense, everyone's empowered to make a decision. So it's small things like when they lost that Hornets or the Hawks game, you know, Scottie has a mismatch on him against Bogdanovic. But Precious will come over with Okongwu guarding him and screen the ball. So you invite the Hawks to switch a better defender onto the ball. That just has to be, it's like if you trust people to make decisions, then they need to reward that trust by making good decisions.
That is one of my biggest pet peeves NBA-wide in crunch time.
Yeah.
When guys have a better matchup and switch off of it because, hey, normally we set a screen in this situation.
And I think maybe I was spoiled because we watched so much Kyle Lowry basketball. Kyle would have never allowed that to happen.
I mentioned the example from Sunday against
team.
the Bulls where he's like pulling guys around to pre-switch or negate a pre-switch, setting up an extra screen to make sure, you know, Jimmy can get Kobe White no matter where they put Kobe White.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think I have multiple frustrations, but this is a good discussion. I see on the next item on the rundown.
We've got a few lighter things for Oren to kind of round out the segment.
He's cool with the heavy.
Yeah,
I love heavy. I love light, medium.
Yeah.
You
excited for this Grady Dick podcast or what?
Yo, you crack me up. Why are you like this?
I was listening to Bomani Jones on the Ringer, you know, NBA show, and he was talking about how, like, not to be mean to Grady, but like it's so easy to make like a podcast look good nowadays. You can have like the good video, the cool snippets, the cool social, but it's like how much of these guys' content is actually like consistently good, and especially with the player pods, like. There's only a couple of them that are actually consistent, first of all. And second of all, like,
jobs.
Consistently. But that's the whole point is like, don't do it unless you can really do it well to me. So we'll see. Like, I'm not going to grade him off one podcast. But look, like, you have to basketball can't be your whole life. You need like a healthy expression outside of it. So on one hand, that's good. I don't have a problem with Grady doing it. But I'm curious to see how it's good. Like, he's a good quote, but I think being a host is a whole nother thing.
So this is, I think, why a lot of athletes or any sort of prominently like public people end up like just withdrawing or just ignoring kind of what the public says about them. It's not from a place of arrogance most times. It's like the Raptors are struggling, so I'm going to be upset that Grady Dick has a podcast. The Raptors are struggling, so I'm going to be upset that Masai has a collaboration with Cam Goose.
Patrick Patterson missed threes because he saw a movie last weekend.
That one I'm upset with just because I don't like Patrick Patterson. But we're going to put that one aside.
Yeah, I mean, I want to just say on it because I've go ahead.
No,
I've been like writing about kind of this exact topic for The Guardian. It should come out this week about like Patrick Patterson, like, yeah, that stuff used to happen once in a while if it somehow got out. But now it's like every single thing these guys do is seen by some camera, some audio recorder, something.
And it's almost expected that you have a thing. Like you're a fashion guy or you're a podcast guy or you're a Twitch stream guy or whatever. Like it's pretty rare now for a guy to not have a thing.
Just like Gary Temple.
Yeah. And that stuff finds its way onto social media. And there is always going to be that section of fans that are like criticizing them. And to me, that's just a wild dynamic that I don't think ever used to exist. And now has become so big. And not only does it affect the players, I think it often bleeds into organizations. Like John Morant is an obvious example. Anthony Edwards is another example of something that happened more recently. These things can affect entire organizations. Draymond Green punching Jordan Poole and that video getting leaked. Like Ramona Shelburne was just saying, like, the Warriors have still never recovered from that. So all of this stuff getting leaked and just becoming public information, I think is really like hard to keep the main thing, as players love to say.
You know, I think for me, it just, my observation of this is just like, there's just an outrage economy. Like there is. And that's not to say that this is to say there aren't things to be outraged for. There's lots of things in the world that are to be outraged for, right? But I think for me, especially around sports, times there's not something to be outraged, but you watch sports for the emotional experience of the highs and the lows. And because there is just like so many people jumping on the high and some people jumping on the low, that it's going to feel, there's almost an incentive to find more things to react to. So as you mentioned, make the main thing the main thing. I honestly, you ask any reasonable person on the street who may be wearing a Raptor cap, hey, Grady Dick has a podcast. They'll probably be like, oh, cool. You know, who do you talk to? What do you talk about? You know what I mean? The average reaction online would be, this guy's averaging 2 points a game. Why has he got a podcast? And I think it incentivizes that kind of reaction online. And honestly, trying to reflect on this, like for our show and just our coverage in general, we have to like, I got to make sure I remind myself, like, don't jump in on this all the time or try to jump in on it as little as possible. Number one, because I know these people in real life. You know, like, we can be in here talking about Bobby Masai. They can do better. We disagree with the Jakob trade or this acquisition's not made or not. I'm going to have to see him later on. You know what I mean? And so it's not even just from the perspective, I got to protect myself, but I got to keep that in perspective. And I think for a lot of people, they don't have that perspective. So that's why a lot of these athletes or famous people just disengage with this overall, because it's not reasonable. This wouldn't happen to you in real life. Dennis struggles in a game. The next day, someone doesn't just like yell at him and make up things like, oh, you know, you're terrible at this, or you hate this guy, you hate that guy. Like, they would just be like, oh, cool, it's Dennis Schröder, let's get a picture, and then they would keep it moving.
Scotty's in a sandwich commercial. He shouldn't have eaten lunch. He should have been in the gym.
That's what I mean. Yeah. It's unreasonable.
No
Everyone knows
lunch
it's unreasonable
until you're 82-0.
But I guess when you log on, you're accepting that you're you're a different person, or it's not like 100% serious.
Yeah.
So you don't act 100% serious.
I wish
either.
I could do that.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't do that either. I rarely say things about players online because I'm always afraid it's going to get back to me. But I wonder how much this stuff affects our jobs, because I think a lot of players, when I talk to them, like for this story, for example, relate social media and media as one thing, right?
Well, they receive it on the exact same medium. And
That's true.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I do want to be clear on one thing. What Will is saying is not that like you can never be critical of something.
No, of
you're
course.
separating
Trust me,
the
I criticize
basketball
things for a
from the
job.
personal. Yeah, and like that idea of like, well, Will knows these people and has to see them the next day. I mean, that's kind of always been the rule that I have followed, where yes, I've been very fortunate to mostly cover good Raptors teams and solid Blue Jays teams, but like, you have every right to be critical. You got to be accountable for it the next day. Like if you're in that, yeah, exactly. Like if I'm going to sit here and, you know, say the X or Y about Darko's rotations, I don't like it, and I'm not at the next game for Darko to be like, hey, I thought you were too hard, or you misunderstood that. And have a conversation about it. That's where it gets a little dicey on our side. Like the goal is still to be correct. It's just to be correct in a respectful way.
Yeah, no, I do think if you say it online, you should be able to say it to someone's face. Like, and like you said, we are held to some account, and a lot of just fans aren't. And that's why they feel like they can get away with saying anything. But because of this outrage economy, because so many fans are saying horrible, horrible stuff about these athletes online, I think it gets back to us. in the sense that, like, ironically, there's less access than ever before in this league. And yet there's more known about these players and there's more viral content about these players than ever before, but it's not coming from us. You know what I mean? So I think that is the disconnect where they might look at us and see some of that negative stuff coming out on social media and say, like, well, why do I want to say my real feelings to these reporters when everything I see online about me on these same mediums, like you said, is negative? I think it really affects our jobs too. So that's something that, you know, I guess I've been thinking about. But it's all kind of just unfortunate.
Stick to Ivy League basketball prospects. No, I'm kidding.
They never get mad at you.
No, I mean, there was if I was Avian Lee, I would be very happy with the piece you wrote about him the other day.
Yeah, tell us. We got like 2 minutes.
By the way, I got to shout out one of his high school assistant coaches, Griffin Bush, was a coach on his high school team and had been bugging me to write his Avian Lee piece for a while. And I was like, man, I'm juggling Shohei watch. I got a 2-12 905 team on my hands and the Raptors. Someone else will do it. And then like 2 days later, you wrote a Avian Lee piece.
That's funny.
So what's going on? We got a saucy Asian hooper in the city.
We do, yeah.
Let's go.
He hopped in my DM and told me that he told Blake to do it, but only after I wrote the piece. So, I mean, yeah, I was happy to do it. Whenever you do stuff about guys who don't get a lot of attention, they're super grateful for it. So he was certainly grateful, and he's just a great kid. I think it's an interesting story. It's up on sportsnet.ca right now, and just about kind of how he played hoops always growing up, but he was always really short. He was my height, so he never took it seriously.
What height is that, buddy?
And then during COVID, he kind of had a decision to make, like either really get in the gym every day and spend this free time he had to hoop, or, you know, do what every high school kid was doing, which is like play video games. And he decided to just like go to all these like kind of like underground gyms that weren't technically open and just train and quietly, like, he got a Princeton connect and they started scouting him as soon as COVID ended, but really no NCAA he wasn't on anyone's radar for the most part coming out of COVID. And then, but he always wanted to go to Princeton. He ended up going there, and this year it's his sophomore season, and he's really been like one of the best scorers in college. We have to wait to the tournament to see how that translates against better competition, because you know it's been non-conference play so far, but not exactly blue bloods. So we'll see how he translates it, but he's averaging like 18, 19 points a game. Just a great three-point shooter, really crafty. He can get anywhere on the court. And yeah, I think another example of a Canadian kid who kind of flew under the radar for a number of reasons. COVID was one of them. And now he's kind of just shown up on the big college stage. And really behind Zach Edey, he's probably the second guy, I would say, who has the best NBA prospects who's in college right now. So he's definitely a name to watch out for, whether it's in 2024, 2025, and yeah, Xavier Lee.
You talking about the top 2 Canadian hoopers in an NCAA right now are Asian? This is sick.
That's what I'm telling you. Yeah.
I'm so happy.
I also just love that any prospect of this age, like in addition to what college they went to, were like coming out of Princeton, coming out of COVID.
Yeah.
From COVID, starting at small forward. But actually, I do really, really wonder like how much that affected the development for this whole like generation of like just people in general. Like, honestly, just people in general. But especially for these athletes who
I think the biggest ones are guys who were in college then, because like if you're pre-college, you can channel that work differently. If you are in the NBA already, obviously you had a lot of resources as much as was possible, but a lot of the college age players just like lost the season, and they get a year of eligibility back. But if you're you're on the NBA radar playing a 5th season in your 6th year, like you're toast as a prospect.
Yeah, real quick on that, it affected Canadians much worse than Americans because they lost a whole year of high school, whereas Americans got like it was only shut down in a lot of states for 1 month or 2 months.
Right.
Canadians are really lagging behind the freshman class and the classes to come because they had a whole year of AAU and high school cut out.
Yeah. And all those scouts can't travel in the same way. You can't cross the border so easily. Yeah. So, of course, there's like a whole economy that goes into this. But you know what, Oren? We just got to get you back to have more insightful conversations.
Also, I want to talk about Curb Your Enthusiasm heading into its final season, which I know is devastating for you. I want to do some NBA Curb adjacencies, but we're out of time for today.
All right. Well, you can find Oren Weisfeld at large. Or you can find him later on the Eaton Center.
Sportsnet, The Guardian, Twitter, whatever. Lots of places.
Yeah. on the Raptors Show. That's the best place I'd like to get Oren. All right, we're going to take this break. Been your host, Willow. You've been listening to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Welcome back to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. I'm your host, Wayne Lou. It is time for my favorite segment on the entire Raptors Show around the NBA, which means that I can just relax and not dictate the conversation. So I'm joined by my co-hosts Blake Murphy and Alex Wong, who's going to take us around the NBA.
Surprise! What's going on, man?
What's going on?
You guys good? Great convo with Oren Weisfeld.
Yeah. What was your favorite part?
Him talking about media access. Yeah, it's changed a lot, man. I've been in this game, you know.
Yeah. What kind of
5,
changes
10
you see?
years. No, I think
No,
just
I'm kidding. Don't do this, man. Don't do this. Raps PR, we love you. Don't worry.
all of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you guys want to talk about? I got Mac McClung on this list. I got Emily Ratajkowski on this list. I got more Dennis Schröder stuff for you guys.
Let's start with Mac McClung.
Mac McClung.
That was not where I would have started.
Former.
Buddy, he gives me a G League option during the G League
Yeah, you
showcase.
are really
I'm
on
going to
brand.
take the G League
All right.
option.
So Mac McClung, the reigning slam dunk contest winner per friend of the program, Shams Charania. The NBA has invited Mac McClung back to the slam dunk contest this season. Is the slam dunk contest the most outdated all-star competition in sports, guys? Are you excited about this?
I think the initial reaction was like, why are we doing this again? But he won. So does he have a chance to defend his title?
And he's like, yeah, I mean, he's a potential NBA player. Like, it's not like it's
Yeah.
that crazy.
We looked it up the other day. He had like a 44 piece or something.
Yeah,
Whatever.
he's
who
putting up
cares,
like
but-
25
In
a
the
game.
G
Like,
League?
yeah, I don't know how well it's going to translate to the NBA given the size stuff, but the size stuff makes the dunk cool. So,
Yeah.
Are you guys still excited in general about the dunk contest?
I've always been a dunk contest. Like, I love the dunk contest and the 3-point contest. Like,
Yeah.
even if they
Mhm.
fall off or like they get too gimmicky at some points or whatever, like the core idea, I'm going to want to sit down and watch. There's
Okay.
nothing you could do. I do think, though, that the in-season tournament highlights something very, very clearly,
Okay.
which is that part of the fall off in the dunk contest has been that until recently, the prize was only $50,000. Even now, it's only, quote unquote, $100,000. Guys fought like crazy and talked about how much the $500K in the in-season tournament meant to them. And that was a situation where you had to, like, that was over the course of 7 games. You could potentially make $500,000 if you win.
Yeah.
And this is like, you're talking about an hour of work and some prep time. If you up that dollar amount, you're not going to get LeBron in the dunk contest.
I don't know.
but you're
LeBron
gonna
likes his
have
500K.
guys- I really do think you could just up the price tag and at least more guys would be in it.
I think you do have a really good point. I think someone like a Zach LaVine could be enticed into winning an extra vacation, like a 500K. Like, I do
How
feel
much
like
are these guys spending on vacation, man?
What you-
500K for one vacation.
what you know about Turks and Caicos.
Yeah,
man?
D'Angelo Russell said it was 2
Is
vacations.
he buying
right?
Turks or Caicos? 500K for a vacation.
No, I do like that. I just think
Oh,
in
man.
general, like, it's been a long time, and I know it's been talked about, but like, it's been a long time since anybody's been that excited about the slam dunk contest.
Yeah, I mean the Levine Gordon one that was here, right?
Yeah.
That one, I don't even know how much of that was anticipation going in. We just ended up getting one of the greatest dunk contests ever.
Yeah.
But like, if you want to build, like, that wasn't that long ago, 6.5 years ago. Like, you could have built off that momentum a little bit better. And yeah, that one, so to some people, got a little gimmicky with the hoverboard and stuff like that. But it was a really cool dunk contest.
Mhm.
I do think, like, up in the price point so that you don't have to reach into, you know, G League guys, or, you know, like, we've seen guys that like Jeremy Evans was in the dunk contest one year, really good dunker, but like
Man.
nobody, it's not moving the needle for a guy. I think you have to at least be like have some in-game dunking highlights for people to get excited. And look, there are guys around the league who can dunk like crazy and don't get the opportunity to in games. So you don't want to rule that out entirely, but like, yeah, I don't think Hamidou Diallo and Jeremy Evans and those type of guys are moving the needle for the average fan as much. And I really do think that 2 guys doing the exact same dunk the exact same way, people are going to react more if it's a guy that they already have an association with and they already, you know, enjoy or were excited to see, even if, you know, that does, you know, hurt you a little bit in terms of, well, you're not building new stars as much that way.
So my only thing with this is the reason the dunk contest fell off is because the best players that everyone want to see in the dunk contest aren't doing it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't see Zion in the dunk contest. We don't see John Morant in the dunk contest. We don't see LeBron in the dunk contest. That's why it fell off. That's the only reason. If those guys went in it, people will be watching the dunk contest like I do. Now, I actually like the dunk contest every year, mostly because it's a spectacle.
Hmm.
Because I like to see their creativity, and sometimes when it fails, it's hilarious. Like some of my favorite dunk contest moments aren't the 50s, aren't
Birdman?
the no. It's like I like seeing like John Collins. A couple years ago, he's
The
like
airplane.
he like just like kicked the crap out of a paper mache plane while wearing like goggles, and I was like, this is awesome. It's so stupid. It's awesome. So no, I mean, look, it's definitely fun to hate on it, but honestly, I think the biggest issue is just they got to get the biggest stars back in the thing.
Yeah,
and I
and
don't know how they do it really.
I think money. Like, you're not going to get the
Right.
absolute all-stars there because they're already doing stuff that weekend. But, like, yeah, you want, I don't know, that next tier of guy that didn't make the all-star game and they're like, I'm out. I'm going on vacation. I'm not coming to all-star weekend. Then suddenly it's $500K instead of, 50K. I
Yeah.
think it's $100K now for first, $50K for second. But, yeah, you up that
All right.
price and more guys will at least think about it. I
the
think.
vacation thing is an interesting point. Let's just do All-Star Weekend in Cancun. Let's do
No.
1, 2,
I
3
mean,
Cancun.
If you know
No.
your NBA
All right.
All-Star history, they tried that in Vegas one year and
Whole
set
league-
Vegas's expansion hopes
No?
back like
All
a
right.
decade.
Whole league gonna be shut down for 2 weeks after for COVID, man.
Well.
Anyways, yeah, money solves everything, man. So I agree. I agree with Blake. Emily Ratajkowski,
Okay.
supermodel, was denied her usual free tickets at Madison Square Garden this week because she left during the Knicks' 21-point comeback against Miami, which I believe took place, I don't know, last week, a few weeks ago. So Emily and her fellow model friend, Irina Shayk, left the Knicks. Sorry.
Her other friend, Irina Kobe.
Oh, wow.
Left the game early, and an MSG spokesperson, when asked about this, said, quote, Emily was not offered comp tickets for the New York Rangers this week, but she was offered and is welcome to buy great seats at any time. So she's being punished for leaving courtside early in a blowout loss.
Bing bong.
How do we feel about this? Who's been more
So
wrong,
lame.
Emily Ratajkowski or Azotam? Yeah.
This is so lame.
Yeah.
You either want the celebrities to be courtside,
Mm.
like if you invite someone to your party and they leave, like, well,
Yeah.
that's their prerogative.
Like,
People
if-
got things to do, man.
Yeah, the risk of having celebrities courtside is that if you get down by 20 points in a game, they have other things to do.
Yeah.
Now, the bigger question for me is like, what are your personal leave a game policy? Like, would you leave a game down? Will,
Oh,
I know
I'd never leave
you
it,
wouldn't.
buddy.
If Will was there as a fan, he would be doing the Devlin, the Raptors cut it to 18.
he does that.
Yeah, he's in the Sprite zone.
I'm 600 level Matt Devlin, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Leave a game. Yeah, I don't know. In the NBA, it's kind of tough now because a lot of comebacks happen.
Yeah.
Back in my day, if it's a 21-point, deficit for the Knicks, like it's over.
Yeah, back in your day, basketball's played ones and twos.
Yeah.
So 21 is 10 possessions.
What else? Did you guys talk
This
about?
is so lame, though.
Did you guys talk about Dwayne Casey
No.
We talked
cameo
about Dwayne
at
No,
Scotiabank
it didn't
Arena?
come up
Mentioned
yet.
it.
We talked about it off air.
Okay.
No, we mentioned it in the first
Did we?
segment a little
Okay.
bit. Yeah, Dwayne Casey was at the
Shouts
game.
to Dwayne Casey,
Yeah,
Pistons front office exec, being at the game
yeah.
last night.
I've already blocked up the game
No,
and the
it's all
first
good.
segment, apparently.
He
all
was he was also on Raptors tonight after. Did a whole tour. Nice to see Dwayne back.
Hey, whether the Raptors win or lose, Raptors tonight will have dinner for you. But yeah, what did you think of Dwayne Casey being back in town?
Yeah, I think it's nice. It's like optically, it feels very soon. It was only 6 years ago that Dwayne was here. So that part of it is usually you see this like after a longer period. But I do think that there's been turnover in the coaching staff since. The Raptors are obviously in a different direction. Dwayne has maintained his roots in the city through family and relationships and things like that. So I think he's actually back here every so often. And Detroit's not that far away. I think this is great. Dwayne meant a lot to the organization, culturally and foundation building wise, and really helped take the team to a level that they hadn't been before, and B, a level where they were in close proximity to make that next move. And I think he should have a pretty positive legacy with this franchise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I love Dwayne.
Is The Rock still in the building?
I don't think so. Unless
The
you're talking,
Rock.
Dwayne Johnson.
No, but seriously.
Also
No.
not in the building.
You know who
Dwayne's
was?
such a gentleman, though. But
Mm.
he does know how to play both sides of that. Because
Yeah.
you remember there were quotes where when he first got introduced to the Pistons, he was like, man, it's different in this building because I walk in here and there's 3 championship,
Oh yeah.
banners. And I'm like,
Yeah.
all right.
I still love Dwayne.
Nah, Dwayne is a nice dude.
You know
He
who
really
else?
is.
You know who else was in the building last
The
night?
Rock?
Intern Jake.
Oh, nice,
Yeah.
nice.
Who put this note in here about
I
intern
put
Jake?
it in here, man. You think Blake put this in here? This
So
definitely
we have an intern who works here at Sportsnet.
What's his last name?
Jake Fisher. And in the evening,
Nah, that's Yahoo Sports Insider.
and in the evening, he during Raptors game nights is part of the game ops team.
Yeah.
Like he's part of the in-arena entertainment. So he's courtside, getting fans going and stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's great. It's always great seeing Jake.
There was we noticed them in the fourth quarter when I believe Scottie and Nick Richards had a play where referees couldn't agree on who it was out of bounds on, so they just did a jump ball.
Yeah.
And so they did a jump ball routine, and Jake, along with someone else in the hype crew, was like
Mimicking
imitating
the jump ball. No,
and I believe Jake mimicked the winning jump ball.
I dapped up Jake after.
Yeah, good for Jake, man.
So
I know he's a big
just-
fan of the show. He's gonna be thrilled once again.
Yeah. Speaking of Dwayne Casey and the stinky Pistons, the stinky
Yo,
tofu.
I'm not gonna lie to you. The Raptors Hornets game was close, but I had the second screen.
Yes.
I had League Pass fired up.
No, but
For Hawks versus Pistons, because
Yes.
it was like a 6-point game at certain points in the fourth quarter,
yes.
and I feel like I'm so invested in this Pistons losing streak in the same way that it was when the Warriors started the season 24-0.
Yep.
It was like you had to watch every game.
No, because
you got to watch every game.
It's become historical, and
Yeah.
you actually got me thinking, William, because like the Pistons are kind of must-watch territory now, like reverse must-watch, I guess.
Yeah.
Let's go through the Christmas Day game schedule in
They're
the
not playing on
NBA.
Christmas.
Is there one game? Which game would you take out and replace with Pistons Raptors
Oh my god.
to lose for the losing streak? So I'm thinking Bucks Knicks. Bucks Knicks, Warriors Nuggets, Celtics versus Lakers, 76ers versus Miami, and Mavericks Suns. Which game are we swapping out to put the Pistons Raptors in?
This feels like blasphemy at this point. Get Warriors Nuggets out of there. The Warriors
Ooh.
have not been an enjoyable team to watch this year
Yeah.
unless it's a night where Steph and Pods are doing their thing.
Stephen Pods is good. That used to be Draymond's nickname.
Yeah,
Stephen Pod.
Bucks Knicks will be a good game, I think. Like the Knicks are really good this year. They're a really good regular season team. I
Yeah.
think that would be a
Yeah,
fun one.
that would be a good
No
one.
Emily Ratajkowski though. Yeah.
Not for that one.
Yeah.
I think she might be busy on Christmas too. But yeah, Warriors Nuggets is gonna be a terrible game. No Draymond for that one either.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
pod, but
No pod
no
mod?
pod, but we have pods.
Yeah.
I'm just saying they should throw the Pistons on national TV at
So
this point.
here's the thing with the Pistons. I'm really afraid because they're playing the Nets back to back. They play the Nets on Saturday, December 23rd,
Mhm.
which is also my birthday.
Happy birthday, man.
Just reminding people casually. That is my birthday on the 23rd of
Message
December.
me, email me, info@stephenlebron.com if you want to send them gifts.
They play the Nets once again on December 26th. It's hard to beat a team back to back.
Okay.
They've also got the Jazz on Thursday, who are not that, like, they're fine, but they're not that bad. Like, the Jazz are beatable,
yeah.
and the Pistons are at home.
Man, I need the streak to go on, man.
Why do you want the Raptors to be the team that breaks the streak so
I don't
badly?
want the Raptors to beat the team. I just want to see history like in the
Because
making.
that's the one that should get flexed to national TV, that December 30th game where they could break the record, and it's against the Raptors.
Yeah, I will not be there no
I
matter
think
what.
that's the night they break the record, right?
Yeah, I think so. By the way,
Yeah, I'm gonna skip that game.
producer JR Manatad said he would get Emily Ratajkowski free tickets if she needed. So,
Man, JR, you know how many years of salary you need to do that?
JR, you went to the casino with $25 a couple weeks ago.
Emily
man.
Rizikowski, that's what he's trying to.
Goodness, man. This guy talking about courtside Knicks tickets, man. Talk about
Mark Stein, Sharif Abdurrahim.
I got to trade
Adam
every vest he
Maris?
has to make this happen. All right, that does it for
Tomorrow.
us today. I've been your host, Willow. You've been listening to The Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Make sure you find The Raptors Show wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe. Please rate and review the show. Thanks once again to Tom Haberstroh, Oren Weisfeld, Dennis Schröder, producer and co-host Alex Wong, Blake Murphy, Derek Brandale, Jennifer Rolnick, David Sis, Jared Manatad, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.